What's up, Badger fans? I somehow got the other two guys here, the three amigos. We haven't done the three of us on Locked On in forever. They got big time. They ignored me. I had to find a
basketball season, I think. Yeah.
To contact them. But we have a commit to talk about. It is big
That's
time.
Greg Gard's fault.
It's not Greg Gard's fault. On Wisconsin, let's talk about Wilnerson committing to the Badgers, another defensive line prospect in the fold for Wisconsin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions do apply. I think this is going to be a fun show, but we are definitely starting off with the commitment. Wilnerson Telemaque. It's Telemaque, right? I know I literally just asked you guys that.
Yes.
6'6", 260-pound defensive lineman, Opelika, Florida. Really interesting offer list. LSU, Illinois, Georgia Tech, Duke, West Virginia, Texas A&M. We fire the cannons, and then let's talk about it.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Thank you, Lance. All right. Guys, Wilnerson commits. Obviously, defensive line has been a massive talking point, not just for what's on the roster, but on the recruiting trail. Rajiv, let's start with you. Thoughts on this commitment and his film?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, first of all, it's a D lineman. Thank you. We need the body in the class. We've talked so many times about how we're lacking D linemen. This is good, right? Petaway was here. Now we got Telemaque. He's very raw. He's got a lot of work to do. We talked about it off the show. I think anyone, you watch his film, he stands straight up. He doesn't really use his leverage. He needs to go lower, but he's got the frame. He's 6'6", 260, right? Is he 260? Mm-hmm. I mean, the guy, like the guy could absolutely be a force to be reckoned with on the D line, but his technique has got to get better. So this is one of those high upside just because of his physical traits. Not necessarily high upside based on the film, because I don't think you really have a lot of high upside on the film. I think you really just have, it's a physical specimen. He's got the measurables. He clearly has a ton of strength. I mean, he's been able to dominate in the high school that he's playing right now, but his technique isn't what you want to see. Like, I know it's the other side of the ball, but when you watch a guy like Hardy Watts, who we've talked about too, different position, but you can just see all the technique that he has. And when you look at Wilnerson's tape, you just don't see that technique. But high upside, happy that he's with us. I'll always take a 6'6" guy, because if he develops and if Whitlow can do his thing, he can be great. But it's just hard to see what it's really going to be. I think his rating is about where it needs to be. We not too much else other than happy that we have the body in the class, and hopefully he gets developed into what Whitlow can turn him into.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I took away from watching him was I do like the burst. I think it's there, but I don't know if he necessarily knows how to use it as effectively as it needs to be used at this point in time. So I think he's got pretty good get off on his film, but the fact he loses leverage negates a lot of it. He does a pretty good job still of moving forward on his film, despite the fact that he doesn't have leverage typically on his man, which says that he probably has some strength, but I still think he needs there's the work to be done there. I look at him and this is the first guy I've seen in forever that I look at and I'm like, you know whose frame he reminds me of, and I kind of said this before, like, it's Erasmus James, like the big lanky defensive end type guy that we have. Now, I think he's going to be heavier than that. I've seen people comp him and say that they think he can get to like 290. I don't know if this staff wants him at 290. I think they probably want him in more like the 275 range, where he's a guy who plays on quickness and burst and power, than being a guy who's a plotter. Like, I think you put him at 290 in a traditional 3-4 where you're saying, all right, I want you to be an elephant end and just kind of hold up the ground here. I don't think that's really what they're looking for out of him. I think they want him to use that burst. I think they want him to be a guy who can be disruptive. I think you get him to 290, you take too much of that away.
I like it, right? For everything you said, it's a defensive lineman with a frame and upside, and you need that. I think there's a couple spots in sports where you got to stockpile bodies. In baseball, it's pitching. You need a lot. In basketball, it's 3-and-D wings. You need a bunch of wings today. In football, it's the trenches. It's offense and defensive line. You got to stack bodies because it's hard to know how they develop, and you might as well take a chance on guys with frame and upside. So in that sense, I really like it. The one spot where I'm going to play a little devil's advocate and you guys have both mentioned technique. It's been talked about. A lot of people have talked about it. I think fans, I'm not saying you guys are saying this, but I think fans sometimes think, oh, he's got poor technique, we'll just coach it out of him. It doesn't click for everybody. Not everybody gets coached out of bad technique. And this is a player that's at a school with good coaching. And if we're seeing it, if we're seeing the technique, his coaches are seeing it. And for whatever reason, it hasn't fully clicked. But again, I like the pickup. I like the upside. I'm here for it. We need bodies. And if he hits, I think Justin, you said, if he hits, he could be really, really good. I think could be more like a David Gilbert player, not in the same frame, but a guy who also from Florida, also a guy with unique physical skills, but a guy who almost kept tantalizing us, but never fully put it together, but was still a really good defense. That was a starter on some really good defenses. And I think that might be who he is, more of a run stopper, a starter, rotational guy. And then if he does hit, a potential star.
And I think that what Justin mentioned about his motor, and like obviously he has got really good get off. That's going to be really good on certain situational plays, right? And he comes in on a 3rd and long, and he's like, look, he's playing maybe on the inside a little bit, just get to the back and get to the backfield. He can maybe do that. I mean, it's certainly not going to be a guy that's going to be much of a run stopper, because especially with the leverage situation that he's got right now, but situational things, he absolutely could play a part. And would hope that, there's development. EJ Whitlow, by the way, he definitely is a guy that we feel like maybe if it's going to happen, he's seemingly the guy to do it. But yeah, I think it really can't be overstated that thank you to the staff for bringing in linemen, because that was like you look down the list and you're like, all right, quarterback check, offensive line check, linebacker check, D lineman, and it also happens to be the weakest part currently on our team. So, I think that he could do it. He could definitely be a guy that is effective. And it's one of those, it's where recruiting is all upside, right? It's all you're doing is you're looking at the potentials. He's got that potential. I hope he develops.
Yeah. One of the interesting things I look at with him is when we talk about what we thought Wisconsin needed to change with recruiting defensive linemen between the last staff and this staff, we flat out said they needed to get guys with upside. It was the biggest thing that we saw as a problem. They got really high floor guys before that had very limited ceilings. And because of that, they never really had defensive linemen that were, other than Benton. Is there anybody you looked at that you're like, that guy would probably play on a top 10 team, like a real top 10 team, like Notre Dame or Michigan or Ohio State? He's probably the only guy that would be in the 2 deep, and he probably would start on most of those teams. I mean, there's a couple of teams in the country that he wouldn't. Maybe Bama, he wouldn't have been a starter on, but he absolutely would be in the 2 deep on those teams. There's nobody else that we've had in the last quite a while, quite frankly, that's been part of that has been to that level. And to be fair, he was a guy that we did not expect to be that. So it was kind of like a diamond in the rough pickup. Now, I think that's what you're kind of hoping for here. We said some similar things when it came to Benton. I don't think anybody thought that he was going to turn into the player that he was as a true freshman. So you're hoping that some of that stuff triggers here. Now, he was a wrestler, so there was some unique leverage things there that he understood. There was some hand and arm strength ability there that was not something that Telemaque is currently developed at yet. But we don't need him to necessarily be there day one. He's a guy we can kind of stash and work on, and hopefully give him a couple of years to kind of get to where Whitlow is comfortable with him and his technique, and reshape his body a little bit and get a little more strength and power on it.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like here is, again, if you take away anything from the stats just in general, like it's athletic upside, it's frames, it's raw ability. I mean, that's consistent across. You look at this entire class, consistent across positions. That's what they're looking for, and that's what Wilnerson is. Willie T. I'm going to call him Willie T because I'm going to struggle with that last name for a while. But that's another example of what this staff is looking for. And I think Rajiv or somebody started this comment. I think it's a great one from Jeffrey Dementer. Whose upside do you like more, Pettaway or Telemaque? To me, I think it's Pettaway because he's already about 280. I think that frame, I feel a little bit better about it. And quite frankly, I just think in-state kids, even though I know he went business, but he came back. I think they intangibly play up just a little bit playing for Wisconsin. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, I think on the surface, I would say Pettaway as well, just because Pettaway is the guy that he looks better right now. He also has a lot of upside. He's only played 1 year, right, of football. So there's a lot of upside just built into that. But you could see the argument for Wilnerson just because of the size and because if that technique gets better, if you just look at on film, if he had better technique, you would almost think he's the better player instantly, just because that strength, that upper body strength looks so crazy. And then, you coach that properly, you could see an upside. I'm also going Petaway, but I think there is an argument to be made for Wilnerson.
I'm saying Wilnerson. I think because of the frame and the get off, I like with him the two raw things that I want to see from a guy on the edge. And part of it is because I think he projects better as an edge. I think you look at Petaway, he's almost kind of a guy that with his frame, because he's so wide, that I think he can play in or out. But I'm curious if any added weight, like this is the thing. Petaway's going to hit probably close to 300 pounds. I just think that's his frame projects that way. I don't know if that's what you're going to see with Wilnerson. I think that there's a couple of different ways his body can go. He can be that guy that maybe gets a step or two quicker, once he puts on the muscle and does some speed work, that we're not kind of seeing what he fully is yet. And that's where I kind of look at it and be like, well, from a disruption standpoint, I think they're both going to be good, but I think there's a chance that from a ceiling, he could be more disruptive out of the two of them.
I think if he hits his ultimate ceiling, he's the better player. I think, and I agree there. I think he has a little bit more burst and raw natural quickness than a guy like Petaway does. I almost feel like Petaway is more realistic to hit his actual ceiling, though.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that for sure.
All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to talk about LinkedIn, and what a great time to do it with two professionals on the show, and then me. LinkedIn is the ultimate professional network for all the hiring you need to do as a hiring manager. Find the best fits for your professional team. There's a reason they are the #1 professional network in the world, and it's because they have the biggest network. They have screening tools to get rid of the people who have no business, looking into your job, interviewing for your job, wasting your time. That's what LinkedIn is here for. I've mentioned the Colander, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now, I did a show the other day, and I was like, Colander. I'm like, nobody even knows who that is. And then every person on the show is like, no, dude, we do.
Everybody does.
Everybody does. But LinkedIn is the colander for your professional network, filtering out all the pieces that you don't want in the spaghetti and leaving the spaghetti, the good candidates behind. Post your job for free over at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay. Let's get into this next segment. I'm kind of excited for this one. I have no idea what Rajiv's going to bring, and I sprung this on Justin late, which is my fault. We're going to do just some random questions, just some kind of thoughts that bubble around in our brain. Nobody's been prepped on which questions we're bringing to it. It's not trivia. I'm going to give you guys my first one because I already kind of threw it out there and teased it as the example. But if you could have one Badgers basketball role player to add into this current year's team, who would it be? I'll give you mine because I already thought about this.
So
I went with Mike Bruzewitz, by the way.
Okay.
I want some toughness. I want some rebounding. Again, I'm saying role players. I saw people throw out names like John Lure and Bronson Koenig. Like those guys aren't role players.
I'm going Vogt just because all I think about is rim protection. And this is when I look at this team. That's all I want. And I feel like Vogt at least brought that. And I mean, he talked about the ultimate role player. I mean, he is not a star in any way, shape, or form, but he gave great minutes when he was out there by just being a good rim defender, and he could do a little bit on the offensive side. So I'm going Vogt for that one.
Who is the man? I can't think of his name right now. It's killing me. The kid that's from Ohio. The dunker.
Potter, Nigel Hayes.
No, the dunker.
Dunker. Oh, Khalil Iverson.
Khalil Iverson is who I would pick.
I love that.
Defense and physicality and some athleticism.
I love that.
I'd love to have that.
A couple other people throughout
low maintenance too.
Names I saw: Douye Dukin, get some shooting and some size in the perimeter. Vito Brown was a popular one that people threw out there. Again, getting some size and shooting. So yeah, that's a good one. Rajiv, what's your first random question that I know he's been prepared for?
So here's my random question. So if you look at our starting lineup, potential probable starting lineup in basketball this year, right? We got Hunter, we got Klesmit, maybe Blackwell, Tanji, Crowell, right? Those guys. Who would win with that, our starters this year projected, versus a team of people that transferred out of here this year and then last year because Jordan Davis was last year. So we've got, of course, Chucky, we've got Connor, we've got AJ Storr, we've got Gus Yalden, we've got Jordan Davis. That's kind of the bigger names, Isaac Lindsey. So you take the transfer starting lineup versus this year's starting lineup. Tell me who wins, Ryan. What is it?
It's this year's team because I think we're deeper. I think if you're talking about 40-minute game, I think this year's team.
I'm talking 5-on-5.
Oh, just 5 on
those
5.
5 guys.
Oh, just 5-on-5.
Just because this way, like we're only because with the transfers, you can't really go deeper, right?
Well,
right.
there's walk-ons that transferred out. I was weighing it all.
5 people that transferred out. I mean, I named the biggest 5, if you will, right? With Chucky and Connor, Matt. I mean, AJ Storr, Gus, and Jordan Davis. Those 5 versus our 5 right now.
Gosh, I kind of think the people who transferred out. That's a great question because
I agree. It's the guys who left, and that's because there are multiple guys that can go out there and probably get you 20. I mean, Connor didn't shoot great this year, but he still had games where he came out and hit 3 threes in like 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. And Chucky is the better guard. He is. I think the guy has some upside that's coming in, but I think Chucky is the guy who the baseline for him against quality opponents is much higher.
That's a great question.
Storr is the best player out of the
last
group.
Part on this one though? Can we make it Siege and Storr play defense? Like I feel like we can score on. I feel like we can score on that group.
They're doing the 1998 Milwaukee Bucks offense where they just score 120 points.
Oh. So the reason that I'm going this year's team is really just because of the fact that like Gus is. I mean, there's no big men. I mean, other than if you look at the guys that are transferred out, we only lost Gus Yalden as far as big men that play. So I feel like that's why I would pick this team. I'd pick our current team, and because I think Blackwell is like kind of a game changer for us because I think he is arguably on our entire lineup right now. He's probably arguably our best player. And then you look at AJ Storr, he was great, and that's fine. But other than that, a CGN would have to play some defense, and he would also have to not have his freshman season versus his sophomore season. So yeah, when I thought of that in the car after I talked to you about this, and I was like, ooh, this will be a good one to see how it goes. So Ryan, you're officially going with the transfers?
I think I'm going to waffle back. I really do because I don't think there's just no size in the transfer group. I think eventually we would wear them down on the boards in the glass.
You sure about that?
I think so. Exactly. I'm not sure. Like I'm waffling.
Are you sure they're not just going to play pick and roll on us the whole game?
It could happen. Can we do it back to them against Chucky? Like I'm just saying. Like,
I don't know. Gus might already be the best defensive big man in that match.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, you ready for my next one? And Justin, when you get one in your brain, pop in.
I got one.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
If you could add, it can't be a star, one role player to the football team at a key position, who would it be and where?
So I got this one already. For me, it's defensive line 100%. And it depends. Again, role player is a little weird. But give me any version of like Chikwe Obasi or Alec James if you didn't consider him a role player. Or
I think Henningsen was. I don't think he was actually considered a star.
Henningsen was an NFL guy, but yeah, Henningsen. Yeah. Give me any type of stout defensive lineman, and you can fill in who you think that is depending on what you consider a role player. I think that's the biggest weakness on this team right now.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I would agree. D lineman. I'm trying to think of who specifically because it's hard, right? When you're thinking role players, my first thought was to go towards like the safety group. I was thinking like a guy like Scott Nelson, but he's a star, right? Like that you would count as a star. I don't know. Like it's tough because role players are just they're not as memorable.
Let's preface
because there's so many.
They could not have all conference accolades.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, I take Henningsen then. I don't think he was an all conference guy.
I don't think he was either.
I'm taking Tanner McAvoy.
Oh, I love McAvoy. That's a great one.
Did he get any all conference?
No, he didn't get all conference.
Because he had like 6 picks last year, didn't he?
He did.
He didn't get all conference, did he?
I'll tell you this though, McAvoy would drive Fickell nuts with his inability to tackle, but I would love him on the back half. I would love him in the back half.
Well, I mean, they still played Latu last year. He couldn't tackle Aaron.
Oh no.
I think Tyler Schumer's got a good one up here. He's got Troy Fumagalli at tight end, which is a good one, right? I mean, that's a really good, like very like sort of consistent pass catcher, good blocking ability, just a guy that gets the job done.
He would significantly upgrade that position in terms of known production.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one, Tyler.
You ready for my next one?
Let's do it.
If you put the entire 2024 and 2025 class together, who is your favorite recruit?
Ooh.
Just pick one.
If we're putting them together?
Yep.
I think it's Darian Dupree for me still. I love his film. I absolutely love his film more than any Badger back I think I've seen recently because it's so different than most of the backs that we've had come into Wisconsin in the last 20 years.
I mean, this is a tough one. I think that. Geez, Cola Crew, of course. JB said that. You know what I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with Kevin Haywood. I just feel like I like Kevin Haywood so much. I feel like he is absolutely going to be a stud left tackle for us. He's going to be that guy that on draft day, he's a first round draft pick, and we're going to just be like singing his praises for most of his career. I want to put like Lafayette kind of in there too, as he's a guy, and Mason Posa this year is my favorite recruit. So between Posa, Haywood, I would go Haywood, but I mean, it's close. That's a good one. There's a lot of good, you know what? Isn't it nice that we're actually having this discussion and we can actually talk about how many guys there are between 24 and 25 that we're excited to see play? I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Tretch and LaCrue were not in the 24 or 25 class.
Right.
I just
Tretch was the one before.
John Berger, D. Jones is better than Dupree.
I agree with that, by the way. I love both.
It really, you have to look at it in terms of what your expectations are. If you're talking about bell cow back, it's Jones. If you're talking about somebody who can be an X factor, I think it's Dupree. I just think he's got more flexibility and things you can do with him to create mismatches.
Zach Bartz goes KBJ.
I don't know, Zach.
That's a great choice. Forrest McGuire agrees.
I'm kind of pushing back on that. I'm surprised that KBJ would be the guy. Like, I mean, would he have been in his
catches that he made in the 7-on-7 stuff was ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah.
The guy was walking on air and he's jumping up over defensive backs and just like making them look like they don't exist on plays.
So in these two classes, where do you put, as far as looking at all the wide receivers that we're getting in these two classes, is KBJ at the top of your wide receiver group?
Not for me. It's Hilton for me.
For me, it's Hilton as well, which is why I was curious what you guys
I had KBJ above Cam Miller, though. I would probably go Hilton, KBJ, Cam Miller would probably be my ranking. Oh, really quick, mine is Xavier Lucas in the 24 class.
That's a good one too.
Which it's
There's a lot of them. This is the problem. I saw Mandel show up on there. People have heard how high I am on Mandel.
Timothy
I legitimately think Mandel has a chance to be a first-round interior offensive lineman. That tells you exactly how highly I think of him because that doesn't happen very often.
Some really good ones in here. All right, we got to take a quick break. Come back. I'm sure Rajiv's got a couple more. I've got a couple more. A bunch more comments in the section too. Heiberger, Ernest Willer. I mean, these classes have been really fun. So there's a lot of good options here. No wrong choices except Cola Crew, who was not in the last two classes, JP.
Or Tretch.
Or Tretch. So outside of that, really no wrong choices.
Listen, if we're talking wide receivers with Tretch added to the group, I'm sorry, I'm going Tretch.
100%.
Oh, yeah. Tretch or Hilton might be an interesting conversation.
He is the most underrated receiver we've gotten in probably the last 10 years, maybe.
Yeah, he's legit.
He should have been a legitimate 4-star. It was a joke that he wasn't based off his production in high school at a really strong school.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Futures, parlays, teasers, spreads, whatever you need. New customers bet $5. If you win that $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets. You can do a lot with $200, boys. Get some Badger swag, get some whatever you want. Please do it responsibly, but a great time. Baseball's going full futures for there. Obviously, basketball just ended in a very, very exciting finals. 5-game annihilation. But yes, if you're on the Celtics, it probably was exciting. And you can do all that over at FanDuel. Spice up your weekend, spice up your sports evenings over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, please do it responsibly, but it is the official sports book of the Locked On Network. It's a reason we use it. It's fast, simple, and easy. Over at Locked On, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Rajiv, what's your next one?
Yeah, I want to put this up here real quick because I do think that we undervalue KBJ slightly. And he said Hilton is the better wide receiver film. I picked KBJ solely based on the electric one-handed catches he had on tape. I think if we look back at the stats that KBJ had for his senior year, he had some numbers. Like he had some serious numbers for a wide receiver. He was not a guy, and he played on the outside in high school because he was just good enough that it didn't matter what his size was. But yeah, that kid can play. He will be in the slot doing damage probably as early as next year. Like he was making plays in the spring already.
Yeah, it's a good shout. It's a good shout, and I think that like it's just not what would have been. That wouldn't have been one of the top few names.
I agree with that for sure.
Okay, guys. So you think about like I remember when I was a kid, and like you always talk about like the big three, sort of like, you know, your quarterback, running back, wide receiver. So I remember the picture in my head of like Aikman and Smith and Irving. So give me your Wisconsin your big three all time. As a Wisconsin fan, you have the big three. You want these three guys standing next to each other, walking off the field as quarterback, running back, wide receiver. It doesn't matter when they played. Give me any time. I'll take this one. I've got Russell Wilson, Lee Evans, and Melvin Gordon. That to me is my Wisconsin big three. If those three guys are on the field at the same time, amazing things are happening. What are your guys' big three for all-time Wisconsin?
I
mean, those are the positions that we have to choose. That limits.
Yeah, we're going those positions. We're those positions.
I think it might be the same for me, to be quite honest. I mean, you could make the argument that Taylor could be put in there. But I think that Melvin did some things on film that were just special in college that maybe just didn't translate to the NFL as well. But I mean, it's hard to argue a guy that put up 408 in a game where he probably could have had over 500 yards easily.
Yeah,
should have won the Heisman.
Oh, it's just
dumb.
I almost just swore. I'm still salty.
It also makes you look at how ridiculous Barry Sanders' stat line was for that season when he didn't even get the bowl game counted, I don't think. And he had 2,600 yards. That's insane.
Melvin Gordon, though, I think Melvin Gordon actually averaged higher yards per carry than Barry.
Yeah, he was significantly higher. Barry was like 6.8, I think.
Melvin was 7 point something. Yeah. It's so ridiculous. I'm gonna go. You got to go Wilson. There's just no other answer that makes sense. Wilson. It's Melvin for me. Receiver, I kind of feel like maybe Altoon.
That's fair.
Maybe you go like
he was an NFL All-Pro.
Altoon, NFL All-Pro. I might go Altoon on the receiver spot, but listen, Lee Evans is certainly not the wrong answer either.
Zach Bart says Brooks Bollinger, who, by the way, when I started at Wisconsin, Brooks Bollinger, he took over as a freshman my freshman year, which was fun. I really loved Brooks Bollinger. Man, this old Sorgy days, but Bollinger, Abbey, and Jonathan Taylor, he says, I want to be different. I think Jonathan Taylor, you could obviously argue any of really four guys, right? Dane, Gordon, Ball, Taylor, you could argue any four of them.
I don't think you put Ball in that group.
I think Ball's a step below the other guys.
Yeah.
He wasn't as electric. Production-wise, yes.
Fair enough. Production-wise is pretty impressive. I mean, I'm just saying, like, he's in the conversation. Quarterback, though, see, receiver is the interesting one. So quarterback, I agree. Wilson's kind of on an island. Yeah. Receivers is interesting because there are guys. I mean, you can go back to like Chris Chambers. Obviously, like there were years. I mean, Williams, there was a lot of years where we had some really special wide receivers that don't really get talked about as much as a guy like Lee Evans does. But Aberdaris is a good shout because, I mean, there was a guy that was very, very consistent. And, depending on how you look at it, it's an interesting point.
I loved Abby too, Zach. It's a good shout out. I don't think he's quite in that tier, but I absolutely loved Aberdaris. And what he did to Ohio State still brings tears of joy to my brain. Rashid or Justin, do you got another one here? If not, I can roll into my next one.
No, you go.
All right.
I mean, I'll keep thinking on it.
If he had never left, would Bielema still be the coach at Wisconsin?
No, not close.
Quick.
No. Okay. I think once the recruiting started to tip, it would have been over with. And I think we learned how quickly it dropped off after Chris left, because by the time we were in 2013, we were like, where are we getting skill talent from?
Yeah. I think if McIntosh had taken over in the same timeline, I would agree, because I don't think McIntosh was going to. We've seen it, so I would agree with you guys. I didn't quite think it was quite the slam dunk, but it's interesting that you guys were so quick on it.
Yeah, I think Brett Bielema is one of those. It's interesting to look back at the Bielema years. I was someone who I never really liked that. Yes, he was successful. Yes, we went to 3 straight Rose Bowls. I hear all that. Everybody always likes to remind me of that. I just never loved the guy. Never loved the late game situations. We lost a lot of close games when we played when Brett Bielema was the coach. There were some controversies and stuff like that. I guess my issue with Bielema is I just didn't get the feels of like he's my coach and I really like identify with him. And frankly, when Chris came back, like I was really happy when Chris started. I was like, wait, this is a Wisconsin guy, and I know that like Bielema just never. And this could just be my own thoughts, and I'm not saying I have anything to back it up. He never really felt like he was our guy, and I do think he was tailing off a little bit. I think he would have made it probably 3 to 4 more years, and then we would have had a dip overall. But I mean, you look at the Gary Anderson years, you look at how we really kind of took off when he brought the new defense, and then everything that Chris did. So I do think that I find myself looking back at those years and thinking about, like, how do I really feel about those Bielema years? I mean, we were successful, but did I really love him as a coach? I really didn't.
Honestly, the MSU game, the biggest, is one of the things that grinds my gears more than anything. That first one on the Hail Mary, I was so angry that they didn't send the rush. I'm like, it is a Hail Mary situation. You want that quarterback as uncomfortable as humanly possible, and you just sit there and be like, don't let him get past you. What was he going to do? If he gets tackled before the first down, the clock runs out.
Justin, you and I are on the same wavelength. That play is burned into my head, like a film on repeat. And if you go back and look at that play, our best defender, one of the greatest all-time Wisconsin Badgers, Chris Borland, is playing like 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, doing absolutely nothing in a late game Hail Mary. Send him after. Just send him after. What is he doing in the middle of the field? He's your best defensive player.
Just say sick him. Just say sick him. Go, the quarterback, go take his head off, is what should have been the call on the huddle. You have one job, and that's to make him uncomfortable.
Herb says offense under Bielema could get humming, could put up 70 on some foes.
They did put up 84.
Yeah. No, here's the thing with Bielema, and last one on this is you're right, Rasheed, like there were some bad close losses, but he also never really lost to the teams we were supposed to beat.
Fair. Very, very good point. That's very good point. Yeah. That's what anytime I say that about Bielema, some people are always kind of fire back and be like, yeah, but he won so many games and he went to 3 Rose Bowls. Like, you can't really complain about it. Like, yeah, that's fair. I get it.
All right, Rajiv, what's your next one?
I have one for,
go ahead.
I have one for you real quick.
All right, go ahead, Justin.
Who is the most indispensable player on defense this year?
Hunter Wooler.
Oh, we're quick on that one.
See, I disagree.
With both of us?
JTJ. You need somebody that actually has reps, that is effective in the middle. And if
I can see the argument,
the defensive line goes downhill, we're in trouble. It doesn't matter how good the secondary and the back seven is.
That's a great question.
What was your answer, Ryan?
It's Rico, Ryan? Because we have
Rico.
If Rico goes down, your top cornerback is Nizer Forkran. And it's no shade, but Rasheed, you didn't even like him last year.
Right. Right. I'm still iffy myself. But look, I think Hunter.
I like
Wooler,
the depth in that room, though.
I hear you.
You're losing a lockdown guy.
I hear you on JTJ, and I understand that, but I think that we've got enough behind them. Yes, they have to do their job, and I hear that. But with our linebacking core being how different it is this year, I think they're going to be able to do a job, even if we don't have like lockdown stuff up front. Hunter Wooler is the heartbeat of that defense, okay? And I think, if Hunter Wooler goes down, it's not just like the production from the safety. Obviously, that production is going to take a hit. It's the emotional and mental side, right? Like, you've got a collection of players who have not played together. You've got a lot of transfers. You've got a lot of young guys. You need a central focal point to kind of be the guy leading that. And to me, when I think indispensable, I think the guy who's on the field, the leader, who's captaining that entire thing, and that's Hunter Wooler. To me, it's very, very clear.
That's fair. Like, I mean, you could almost say this: they can't lose any of those 3 guys. I think those are all good answers, because I hear you on the depth on the defense line too, Justin. Like, James Thompson has to stay healthy. He has to be healthy and he has to be good.
And somebody put a comment up for the offensive side, and I actually patently agree with it. John Koppenmeyer. Renfro cannot go down. And yes, you are accurate. We could have TVD go down and we could put Braden Locke in. You cannot have Renfro disappear, because they have nobody right now that you look at and say, I feel comfortable with that guy playing plus center the rest of the season.
Okay, so this one, put your thinking caps on a bit. You guys already said the Michigan State game, so you can't use Michigan State because that's one. But I want, and you also can, and you cannot use the national championship in 2015. Give me a game, or specifically a play, that you would change in your entire fandom. There's a play or a game, maybe a play, if you can think of one, that had an impact on the season that you would change if you could to a different outcome. It cannot be the Michigan State game. I'll give you guys a minute to think. I'll go first on this one because I wrote it. So for me, Ron Dane against Cincinnati fumbled the ball twice. Okay.
I was going to say that was the one I was thinking about instantly, because we're in the national championship game.
Because we're in the national championship if we win that game. And that to me was one of the most like devastating. I'm like, are you kidding me? How are we fumbling inside the 5-yard line? Not once, but twice. That to me was killer. I'll also say Michigan, my freshman year, 99, same year pretty much. Chris Chambers dropped a pass in the touchdown. I was sitting right behind him. It literally hit him in the chest, in between the 8 and the 8, right here, then hit his leg and bounced to the ground. And I was like, oh my gosh, we could have beat the Tom Brady-led Michigan Wolverines right there, and we did not. And that was a crushing defeat. And the Cincinnati one, of course, same. But those were my two that they're ingrained in my brain as just plays that I would wish we could just have back.
The other one that I would say would be the Rose Bowl against TCU, us just not running the damn football.
That's a good one.
Man, you open up a door into spots in my brain that I've locked away, right?
Yeah.
Therapist.
All that trauma that's now being resurfaced.
You told me to come up with some good ones.
I'll tell you the first one that popped in my head. It's not football, it's basketball. It's the Chioza 3-point heave against the Badgers that would have got us into the Elite Eight. And especially the way we came back and fought in that game. That team, we had a road to potentially get to another Final Four that year, and instead they throw the ball in. Nobody really guards him. He gets a pretty open look from about half court, sinks it. They walk it off. The next year against Notre Dame, when we had a 3-point lead with the ball shooting free throws with like 10 seconds left, and they came back and beat us because we missed the free throw. They came down, scored right away. Then we turned it over on the inbounds pass, and they scored. So those back-to-back basketball years are like brain just ingrained in my head. On the football side, honestly, some of the losses that pissed me off the most, it's like the losses to BYU when you were a home favorite by like 30. It's like and here's a great one. The last drive with Hornibrook against Ohio State, Big Ten championship game, we're 4th in the country. If we just finish off that last drive, we beat Ohio State, screw those guys, and we go to the playoffs.
Yeah. That I was going to say that one too, or this one, Zach Bart's drop punt versus Oregon in the Rose Bowl. There are multiple ones against Oregon in the Rose Bowl. You could have the Aberderis fumble in the Rose Bowl where his arms were pinned back so he couldn't dive on top of the ball.
I'm really looking forward to getting some revenge on Oregon from the painful
it's going to happen. It probably won't be this year, but we will absolutely
it's going to be this year. Have some belief,
a few times.
Come on.
What a horrifically depressing question.
I know. This was a depressing
Thanks
one.
A lot, Reggie. If you just
because in my head, I just can't. I know, right? Thanks, Forrest. Yes, it was like you guys know, you have no idea, and I'm sure Badger fans. I think about 2015 so much. I think about the game against Duke more often than any human being should.
That makes me noticeably angry.
To
along
me,
with
like
that
it's just like
game.
When you have that. Oh my God, the ASU game. It's a very depressing topic. It's a very depressing topic. But it is nice to just kind of take back a little bit and just remember it's like that. But that's the mind of a sports fan, right? Like you have these moments in your brain that you could just think back to, and where you were sitting, you know what you were eating, you know what you were drinking. And it's just like one of those things that, the Big Ten title game against Penn State, I know exactly where I was sitting right over there. It was freaking
I'm gonna win this one back for us. Now let's do the opposite. A Badger moment that will forever stick in your head is like something incredible that happened.
Get it really quick before we get to that. I got to tell you a quick ASU game, the story, Joel Stabby. So the night before I went up to Mount Washington in New Hampshire, I did a night hike up Mount Washington. Crested it, got to sunrise, came back the next day.
Vision Quest up there?
Didn't sleep the entire day because that was a night game. So I stayed up the entire day because I was hopped up on adrenaline from climbing a mountain. I watched that entire game. And then after the Joel Stave didn't kneel, but he did I went outside and I started smashing a tree with an axe. And my wife was like, what the hell is going on? I'm like,
Ryan, you have some of the best stories ever.
I had been up for like 47 hours at that point. I climbed the mountain. I was hopped up on IPAs, and I was out there at like 3 a.m. in Connecticut chopping down a tree with an axe. And my wife, I just lost my mind.
Thinking she's like in her own version of
So I'll go on Justin for your question. For me, it was when we beat Ohio State when they were number 1 in the country. We were 19th. That was really the first time since the incident in the 90s that we actually rushed the field because I was at the game. I was sitting in the front row, and Owen Daniels I had a couple classes with Owen Daniels. And I saw him on the field and we knew each other, and I just literally jumped into Owen Daniels' arms like I was his freaking prom date or something. It was the most ridiculous thing ever.
He shoved him aside.
The total like elation after that game and just being able to experience that, beating Ohio State, beating them when they're number 1 in the country, doing it at Camp Randall at night. I was sitting in the front row. I jumped onto the field. It was just awesome. And that moment sticks in my brain. And another thing I would say is, frankly, like winning Big Ten championships when Devin Harris, like we were playing Michigan the last game of the season to clinch it. And one of the last plays of the game is he did one of his patented steals and then his little like dunk where he pulled it back.
Mm-hmm.
And we were already lined up, ready to rush the court. And it was just like the pandemonium in the Kohl Center and rushing the court. So they're both basically rushing the court in the field are my moments that I think just pure happy thoughts every time that comes to my mind.
AB, The Shining, you said was I was going to say Ryan's wife thinking she's in her own version of it. Yes, that's what I was thinking of. The Shining.
For me, it's pretty quick. It comes up. It's beating 38-0 Kentucky. Like that was.
And I called that before that game happened. There's probably a lot of Wisconsin fans that did, but I'm like, we're just going to carve them up offensively. We're too good offensively. Well, they're more athletic, but I just think that there wasn't a team that we couldn't score on that whole season. Like when we were locked in, we carved up everybody.
That team was so good. And it's coming off the year that they beat us and they were 38-0. That's just honestly my favorite game, Badgers game ever. On the football side, Nebraska joining the Big Ten and just completely throttling was always amazing to me.
I watched that highlight consistently.
I do too.
Every once in a while, I'll throw it on at the gym when I need a little bit extra energy to get going. Somebody was putting up the Shabert to Lee Evans. That one was a big one. That Matt Shabert, his only like thing that he probably remembers from college is like, I once beat Ohio State. I threw it past Lee Evans.
It was awesome.
What was yours, Justin?
There's been a ton of them. I would say the one against Kentucky was huge for me. For football, I would say probably that the Ohio State game is the one I go back to the most. That game was just like, especially the way we went out there and just kind of like took it to them. I think we were up like 21-3 or something like that to start that game, and it was just like we were whooping them. And JJ Watt was going nuts. He had like 3 sacks in that game, and Borland was in that game too, doing stuff. He had the stuff. He had the stuff, didn't he? On the 4th down, didn't Borland break through?
Borland was in that game. Was
I don't think Borland was on that.
Was he?
I thought he was. No,
Borland came later, man.
Was he?
I think
you're okay. You're right. I think he came the year after.
Yeah, Borland came later.
But that was still an amazing game. Yeah. By the way, I wanted to shout out Andrew Turn. He said he finally caught a live show. What's up, Andrew? I meant to say, appreciate you things earlier, but I wanted to get that up here. All right, I got one more. This is maybe kind of a quicker one. Would you rather have a quarterback this year for the Badgers, Van Dyke or Jack Cohn? And before you answer, Van Dyke career passer rating in college is 147. Jack Cohn is 148.
Jack Cohn.
I don't think it's close for me, and I would say it's TBD, and that's because I think there's more upside.
I'm Cohn too. I think. See, it wasn't that close to me, and I felt like it's Cohn, which is interesting.
Yeah, for me, I think it's for. Sorry, go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
I was just gonna flat out say if we get redshirt freshman TVD, he is the best quarterback, and it's not close between the two of them. Like the numbers that he put up when he was playing on Miami in that season, he absolutely carved people up for a good portion of that season. And if we get that guy, Cohn has never touched that level of production in college.
I was at the game a few years ago when we were at Purdue, and I was a double or triple overtime when Jack Cohn. It was raining. It was pouring. My entire family, because I'm from Lafayette, Indiana, my family all went home, and I just sat there with my aunt, and we stood there until the end, and it was awesome. And I just feel like Jack Cohn. That game is ingrained in my head when I think of Jack Cohn. The consistency and the decision making, and frankly, like I would trust him back there. If he was back there right now, I'd be like, okay, we've got receivers, we've got running backs, we've got a line. He'll just be a good game and he'll do his thing and we'll win games. But with TVD, you're right about upside, Justin. I understand that. But we also have the downside of that. He could have not his retro freshman year, and then we'd wish we wanted Cohn. And I think for me, given the fact that we've got a lot of pieces around him, I want the more consistent quarterback that I trust.
I think Cohn was better with his feet too. That's the other part. Like we saw that against Ohio State.
Cohn did have a bad sophomore season though too. So it's not like he was perfect his entire college career.
But I think he was more consistent, and I think better with his feet. I trust him more. TBD has more upside. I think Cohn is safer. So it's maybe what your risk appetite is.
Yeah.
But to me, I was pretty quick in my brain to say, I think I'd rather have Jack Cohn as well. So it's an interesting one. And again, if you just look at some of their efficiency numbers across their careers, they're kind of identical. TVD takes bigger passing yardage, and
I was going to say his yards per attempt has to be higher.
Is higher, but Cone's completion percentage is higher, and then the rating is about similar. So most people in the chat, by the way, have gone Cone. Mertz are TVD from Lenny Dimes. It's TVD.
It's TVD for me, and it's not close because of the fact that, listen, I've watched all the Mertz film. I've seen him play here, and there are too many times where he just seemed like a deer in headlights if he didn't see what he wanted to see, or if you got pressure on him. When he had people running at him, he would just completely wilt, and that was something that you can't afford to have.
I don't ever want to see Mertz in a Wisconsin uniform. I feel like to me that just didn't work. And I remember I feel like that was a quarterback recruit I was so hyped about. I could not wait for Mertz to get here. Then the Illinois game happens and we're thinking, holy crap, we're going to have the next Heisman Trophy winner. And then just straight down.
The biggest takeaway, by the way, when I watched Mertz's footage from this last season, his ball placement was absolutely horrendous most of the time. He had a good wide receiver that really bailed him out on some bad balls.
What about
he throws to a wide open guy on the sideline who almost falls.
Justin, you're breaking up on my side.
I think we're losing Justin.
Last question here from Mehmet. 2017 Hornibrook, obviously the author of that really good team, or Tyler Van Dyke?
I'm taking Hornibrook on this one. That was a special season, and I liked I was a big fan of Hornibrook. So yeah, I'm going 2017 Hornibrook for sure.
If that's the version we get, I would agree. I would take 2017 Hornibrook.
See, I'm going to disagree because low key there were some things that he did that season that weren't great. I think he had 2 3-pick games, so he wasn't exactly like lights out. There were games where he was not good. So I would probably take TVD simply because of the fact that I think that the arm is going to be needed this year, and I don't want a guy with a pop gun when we're playing games against Oregon, Alabama, and Penn State and USC. I want somebody who can put the ball on people and into tight windows.
I think this is a really interesting comment. I know we're going late on the show, but this Badger Bournemouth comment here that you just put up, Brian, Miami fans hated TVD last year. Think about Miami fans are watching this right now being like, guys, this is you and Graham Mertz. Like,
I know
you guys, you were so ready for Graham Mertz to be gone. And here we are, like, and definitely me talking bad about Graham Mertz and I'm not bad, but just not his game here.
Right.
And we're getting a guy that we're now comparing to successful Wisconsin quarterbacks. And we're picking this guy. It's like they're picking Mertz over, Anthony Richardson, who knows? Like, it's just, but it's interesting because we don't really have any idea what TVD is going to be this year, but it's so because we have the optimism and we see the upside of him, but we absolutely could end up being like, TVD, what a bad experiment, Yeah.
So I want to say something on this with regards to the TVD thing. I have watched at least his highlights from last year. I got to look for full game footage on him. That guy made some special throws last year. He may not have had a great season overall. There are throws that I have not seen a Wisconsin quarterback make outside of Russell Wilson that TVD made last year, where a guy was just starting his break. The corner was sitting on him. He puts it up, and the guy gets one step, and it's a perfect ball right on his chest. And that's something we haven't had somebody with that type of anticipation or ability to throw into that tight of a window since Wilson.
He has special arm talent. There's no arguing that. The problem is he's a special arm talent guy that is still in the college for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Because most of those guys go to the NFL.
But none of those other guys left early either. So.
Well, listen, yeah. I think from quarterbacks, ultimately, you want somebody who you can trust. And maybe that will be TVD. I think I just trusted Cone a little bit more. But TVD, to your point, is the upside guy, I think.
I think there's a lot of arguing that we're having. Like, people are looking at TVD, and it's similar things that we saw with Mordecai coming into the season where we're like, well, he's turnover prone or whatever. And it's like, at some point, you also have to take a look at the coach and hope that Longo is just adept at being able to rein these guys in a little bit to make them not make boneheaded throws. This offense, by the way, I think it may be difficult to learn. I do think it lends itself to pretty easy reads, which I think is the plus to it, why it's such a productive offense. The quarterback doesn't have to think a lot when he sees what he's looking for.
Rajiv, did you have any others? Justin, any last ones? I went through my question list.
I'm good.
No, I think
we are not answering really quick. Sorry, Robert. We're not answering Austin Confensis or TVD. That is not
safety or what?
Yeah.
this is a good idea. That was cool to just kind of, and I think we'll have to come up with more. Like, and we'll just kind of add things. And by the way, anyone in the chat, put some questions that you have into the chat, and we could talk about them on future shows. This was a good thing to do.
Appreciate you guys as always. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the night. If you watch this later and you're not in the chat, I hope you also have a great day wherever you get it. We will definitely have more content coming up. Logan Powell interview drops tomorrow. Landon Locke later this week. Really do appreciate you guys so much. Obviously, Justin and Rajiv, go check them out on Twitter and over at the Bucky Report. Gentlemen, on Wisconsin, a good day. Got a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Let's go.